Hello and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to share with you the 5 best combat dinos for Ark Survival Evolved. And just before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe as it really does help the channel. In at number 5 is the Spino. Now in my opinion, the Spino is an absolutely amazing combat creature, mainly due to how much damage it does and how many abilities it has to assist with its damage. Firstly, it has the hydration buff, which the Shadow main has as well, which enables it to do insane damage when in or touching water. Also, on top of that, it can stand up on its hind legs and do even more damage. A high level Spino with all of these abilities is actually going to do more damage than a Rex, but it does lack compared to the Rex in one major field. It has a lot less health than the Rex. Now don't get me wrong, the Spino still has a reasonable health stat. It will still get you through most things quite easily and quite a few bosses easily. But for the larger threats on Ark and those longer bosses, this thing's health just simply can't keep up with something like a Rex. Yes, 20k health is still great for any Ark creature, but compared to when you're getting your Rexes up to 50k health, it's not even half of the health of what a good leveled Rex can have. And for some of those longer bosses, especially the Master Controller on Genesis Part 2, it simply does not stack up in any way to the Rex. But all of this doesn't mean the Spino is a terrible combat creature, and obviously it isn't because it wouldn't be on the list otherwise. This thing is still very useful and is actually a lot easier to tame than the Rex usually because it spawns in less hostile environments, as there are less dangerous creatures around where a Spino is, because it's usually killed everything else or it spawns in quite desolate areas. And speaking of the Rex, in at number 4 is the Rex. Now overall, the Rex is a lot better than the Spino for combat, mainly due to its much higher health stat. Whereas Spino has 20k, this thing can level up to something like 50k if you go breeding madness on these things. Just maybe don't take these things swimming. The Spino definitely does have a big advantage there. And also in terms of mobility, the Spino does have a big advantage as well. But today we're not talking about mobility, we're talking about sheer skill in combat. And this is a great creature for doing anything like that. This thing is great for doing any bosses if there aren't significant other creatures that will do better. For example, on the Broodmother, a Megatherium is going to do a lot better than a Rex because of that insect buff. But for something like the Dragon, you should never use the Rex because it has a buff against carnivores. But for pretty much every boss that isn't underwater, I'm talking about the Moda there, this thing will do great for every single Ark boss. And it really does show, because most Ark players will use Rexes, a Uti and a Daedon for pretty much every boss that they do. And also, on top of all of that, the Rex is just generally a fun creature to have. You can't say it isn't cool to ride around on a really high level Rex and just absolutely decimate every creature in the area. These things are great. In at number 3 is the Megatherium. Now briefly, we did talk about this when I talked about the Rex, and I mentioned that this thing is great for defeating the Broodmother. It is also a great caving creature, and it is great for killing any kind of insect. And the reason why this is because it has a special buff. Don't get confused with this buff and the alpha buff as well, as they look very similar. Once the Megatherium has killed a bug, it will have an ominous orange glow, and then it will just go into all fury. And I'm pretty sure it is called the Insect Rage buff or something similar to that. Also, on top of that, it is reasonably mobile and it has a decent health stat. But like every Ark combat herbivore, this thing does have a major downside, and that is the fact that herbivores can't actually heal very quickly. but in a boss situation with the Daedon, this shouldn't be much of an issue. But when you're just going out to kill some creatures to gather some chitin, you're not realistically going to bring a Daedon with you everywhere, so you'll have to use sweet vegetable cakes. And let me tell you, sweet vegetable cakes are actually very expensive, and a hell of a lot more expensive than meat. So be careful when you're going into long battles with this thing, as it will take quite a while to heal, so remember to really level some health when you get yourself a Megatherium. In at number 2 is the Giga. Now you probably expected this thing to be on the list, and you would definitely be right. This thing is an absolutely insane combat creature, but not a great boss creature because this thing actually isn't allowed into most boss arenas, as it is considered too powerful. But on Extinction, all of the Titans use Gigas or Titans, or the next creature that is on this list. Either way, the Giga is an absolute hunk of a creature. It deals an immense amount of damage and has a hell of a lot of health. The Rex absolutely pales in comparison to the Giga. This thing can absolutely demolish through any creature that you will see in Ark. And if this thing was allowed into more boss arenas, I'm sure it would be very useful then. But the Giga has two main downsides. The first one that I want to talk about is its absolutely abysmal stamina. This thing's stamina is absolutely awful. It is going to run out of stamina so quickly, you can barely get this thing around without just a little thing popping up to say you've run out of stamina. And no matter how many levels you put into stamina, it's simply not going to improve for you, which is really sad. And the other downside is it has a rage meter. So once it has been dealt enough damage from whatever you were trying to fight, it will kick you off and simply go into a rage, killing you and also probably killing the creature you were trying to attack, considering it's not a boss. And in at number 1 is the Carcharodontosaurus. Now in my opinion, this thing absolutely replaces the Giga in every way. This is by far the most insane, most powerful, most useful combat creature in my opinion. Except it still can't be let into most boss arenas, so you're still going to have to resort to a Rex or a Megatherium or whatever is more useful for those cases. But the reason why the Carcharodontosaurus is so much better than the Giga is it does everything the Giga does, but it does it a little bit better, and it fixes all of the issues I had with the Giga. Firstly, this thing's stamina doesn't actually suck. It's not great at the beginning, but leveling it does actually make a difference. I wouldn't recommend putting all of your levels into it, as this is a combat creature and not a travel creature, but its stamina is still very reasonable. Also, on top of that, it doesn't have a rage meter as well, so it's not going to kick you off and absolutely demolish you. This thing also does have a blood rage, which means once it has killed enough creatures, it is going to do an insanely buffed amount of damage. And once it has actually reached this blood rage high, it's going to be dealing even more damage than the Giga. But like every great creature, it still does have a downside, and that is its taming method is a bit buggy at times, and it can really go wrong. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you didn't agree with this list, comment your top 5 in the comments down below, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye.